Mr. Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your service to our country. I'm going to run through some things that I want to note for you and your consideration and observations that I want the American people to make. I don't think there's a clearer or starker contrast between the President of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden, you and the Democrat Party in terms of your view of the role of government, your policies and plans for the future of this country, and the policies and plans of Republicans. I'm generally speaking here, but there's a significant philosophical divide, and so I recognize that. I don't expect you to come up here promoting policies that I think would be better for the country, but as budget chairman, one of the things we all have to do is find a way to rein in deficit spending that's now $2 trillion, and a debt that it's 34, and an interest on the debt that is going to be $1 trillion, which is more than what we spend on all of national defense. President Biden's budget, I'm sure you're aware of this, is the highest level of sustained spending in the history of the United States. Of any budget ever submitted in this building, in this institution, highest ever. And because of its high sustained spending and borrowing, even with $5 trillion in taxes, Mr. Secretary, we leave our children and our grandchildren, generations of Americans, with $16 to $17 trillion more in debt, even after trillions of tax hikes on families, small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Our plan's different. We balance in 10. That's the plan. It's got to be followed, but that's the blueprint. We rein in spending. We root out waste. The $2.3 trillion in improper payments, $50 billion in Medicaid last year, but that's not picking on Medicaid. It's in every entitlement program. We reignite growth. We get 1%, which is $3 trillion. We don't raise taxes. We bring down the debt to GDP by 40 points. Now, we can debate the details of it, but those are the different views of the future and our children's future in this great country. When I look at the healthcare side, let me make some observations. For example, you all suggest that you're going to somehow shore up Medicare and the Medicare Trust Fund. Hey, great. We should work together to do it, quite frankly, because that's the only way it's actually going to get done. But I want to make sure that we have a little bit of sort of an honesty and test here on this. When you propose in the budget saving $200 billion with your price controls, you double down on it, saves $200 billion as opposed to $100 billion in the IRA, and then you raise taxes, payroll taxes, about $750 billion. Combined is the money you use to put presumably to the Hospital Insurance Trust Fund or Medicare Trust Fund. But my question to you is, why should we believe you're going to do that? Because when the Democrats had total control and this administration was in charge, the $100 billion that was saved from the IRA out of Medicare was used to subsidize green energy tax subsidies. So now you're telling me you're going to use $200 billion when you double down on that out of the savings of Medicare to save Medicare. It doesn't add up, okay? So that's one. Secondly, Medicaid. There are studies that say that people without insurance do better in terms of outcomes than people on Medicaid. So we got to work to make that program work for our most vulnerable. Here's the deal, and this is a question I'd have for you, but I don't have time to ask it. Maybe you will respond somewhere in this session. But did y'all fix the inequity? Because I hear a lot about inequities from this administration. How about the inequity in terms of the match that you all give to the single adult population, the Obamacare expansion of Medicaid versus the sickest, poorest, most vulnerable among us? There's a much higher match on the single adults. There's a great place that we can equalize the payments, save some money, and help the most vulnerable. Site neutral payments. We should be paying hospitals the same amount that we pay independent physicians for the same outpatient procedures. If we did that, we save $120 billion. Now, where did that idea come from? Over 10 years. That idea came from President Obama. We used President Obama's good idea, put it in our budget. Why isn't that in y'all's budget? Maybe there's a good reason, but you already have a bipartisan significant saver there. The last piece I'll mention that drives me crazy is the Obamacare subsidies to people making half of whom will make over 400% of the poverty level, some of whom make $500,000 or more. The only answer to that is that you're trying to drive everybody into a public health system, into a single-paid system, into a government-run system. I mean, I know that's the philosophy, respect it, we can be honest, we can debate it as which one works best, but that's what you're doing. Why would the taxpayer subsidize people making $500,000, $600,000 to go into a government-run health care, many of whom already have private insurance? These are my concerns. I put them before you for your serious and sober considerations. I appreciate your service to our country.